Are you ready for racing under the lights? Well, you're in the right place. It's time for action today, coming from Volusia Speedway Park in Barberville, Florida, on the iRacing services today. Hammer Down iRacing League gets all set to go for Saturday night racing with the Dirt Pro late models here on tonight's coverage here. On tonight's broadcast, I'm Justin Prince, as we're just moments away from the start of our first heat races for tonight's events here for the Kenton Wine Diesel Pro Late, coming into week number 4 of their season. Coming into today, drivers like Keith Hackney as well as Nicholas Daffern, along with TJ Coggins, Blake Mosley, and Taylor Brisella will try and continue up the runs, coming into today top 5 in the point standings. But right now, everyone's all focused on one thing: having the best run possible in tonight's heats. There will be 2 heats for tonight's action, 10 laps apiece here from Volusia. For today, it's going to be for the first heat. It'll be Jeremy Freeman starting off on the front row with Eric Elmore to start off in the front. In second row, it is Thomas Coggins with Howard Weaver, who had the pole time, cycle back with the inverse number at 4 to the 4th spot. Cole Harvey's in the 5th spot with Richard Spur in 6th. Fall behind them with Curtis Kelly and Curtis Uphoff, followed by Brenda Harvey to round out the 9 cars in our first heat for tonight's action. Here for Hammer Down iRacing League. It's going to be interesting to see how these drivers handle today's race. Remember, with Volusia, it is a track that has some interesting characteristics, not just with the D shape on the backstretch, but as well the shelves with the racetrack, where if a lot of times you have to position yourself, of course, with the cushion and then be in a preferred line, but a lot of times at this track, you go too high, you have the risk of going up the shelf and hitting into a wall. For some drivers, we'll see how they feel things out with the track conditions tonight. It is 81 degrees Fahrenheit, 82 track temperature tonight with partly cloudy skies. Not too much wind. No wind is going to be a factor, of course, with this race today on this half-mile circuit as everyone gets themselves lined on up. And away they go down for their couple pace laps here in this one. For some drivers, they're trying to look to get themselves some confidence here with Jeremy Freeman right now, coming in 9th in the point standing, 66 points for him on the season, compared to the points lead of 112. He'll be looking to have himself a good day. It starts off with the heats to try and get themselves positioned. There were a total of 3 drivers who did not record times. Of course, Harvey was one of them. Also, a couple others did not record times overall, including Matthew Everts in this one. So about 1 car per heat that did not put in qualifying times. Meanwhile, they continue to work their way around the racetrack. Very low usage in terms of the dirt, so it has not really slicking up too much yet. If you look at the angle of the lights, some of the slicked up sections have been near the bottom groove right now. We'll see how the lines form up as the heats and so forth continue on all the way up until the mains right here. Meanwhile, getting all lined up all the way down the D-shaped backstretch. Few moments away from the first green flag for heat number 1 here for tonight's action. They're going to get all set to go again. Freeman has the control. On the outside is Elmore. They wait for the green flag. Away goes Freeman, and away we are. And off and away to start off tonight's Saturday night action from Volusia. And already bouncing around a little bit and bounce all the way up the track was Eric Elmore, going from 2nd to 5th in the span of half a lap. He'll have to go on the high side and see if he can carry the momentum there along the cushion. Unable to do so, stuck in a side-by-side battle with Cole Harvey. Right now, the advanced number is 3 for tonight's heat, so he needs to gain more than just this 1 spot back, but potentially more. Howard Weaver now goes for the pass. Meanwhile, up at the front, going to move right on by for 2nd, past Thomas Coggins, and that easily gets him back to the top 2 within the span of about 2 laps. Meanwhile, Coggins, though, carrying momentum on the exit, trying to slide his way down on the bottom of the racetrack. Everyone's sticking to the middle groove to start off. They're going to simply cycle back and go back to single file racing as Howard Weaver trying to slowly gain up time. 16.3s last time for the lead cars. Next up behind them in the 16.4s, but a 16.2 from Eric Elmore this time by. He'll try and close on up, approaching halfway next time by. Also still in the fast range, but Howard Weaver in the number 20 machine is the fastest car on the racetrack. He'll run himself up in the middle groove again, try and close up at here a little bit of time, gaining about a tenth or two per lap right now on Freeman. That time, a bit slower, but right on the doorstep as we pass the halfway point last time by at the start and finish line. Right now, it is currently the 018, the 20, and the 88 all on your screen that are in that top 3 range right now, trying to get themselves in the best spot with the bubble spots to go from here and starting to really pull away now from Eric Elmore as the track is slowly starting to slicken on up. Everyone's sticking to the bottom, to the middle groove right now on the track and going from there. 3 laps to go in heat number 1. Continuing to try and go on the patient attack, Howard Weaver working his way with the steering wheel, going a bit earlier, entry is sliding in, trying to rotate that car way a bit to the right side. It actually worked that time with the earlier entry to be able to close up an extra half attempt. He's going to go side by side just about underneath the left rear quarter panel, coming to 1 lap to go here for heat number 1. Freeman's going to go and try and use the higher line, bumped in the back now by Weaver. Weaver goes now to the bottom of turn number 1, really slicking on up. Weaver's going to have to really dive it in if he wants to win this first heat. It looks like he's just going to go for the clean run here. And it's going to be Freeman coming away with the checkered flag with heat number 1. Howard Weaver second and third, Thomas Coggins. And just behind them, outside the transfer spot, is Eric Elmore in the 4th spot for heat number 1. That quickly shifts things around here for the next group of drivers. And it's going to be Daniel Bass that's going to be leading them off after a strong start to tonight's event. He'll be starting the inside with Dustin Sizemore on the outside. Shane Kelly and Blake Mosley will start off in the following row. Of course, Mosley sitting 4th in the point standings. Skip Tuttle follows them off with Terry Landis, followed by Dustin Hall and Matthew Everts to round out the 8-car field expected for this heat as they wait for the pace truck now this time. Again, 10 laps, 3 drivers advance. Invert number was 4. And we've seen in terms of the racing, and I've noticed this in different series as well with the late models, usually it's more around the middle, to the bottom to the middle, that is the preferred groove. That has been the case so far, and so far, not too much slicking it up that we have seen so far, other than on the entrance of turn number 1 for the most part to start off tonight's action. Interested to see if it continues to be that case or if the turn number 3 entrance really slickens up. It's going to be a total of 7 cars in total that are going to be on the grid as they pull off and away down towards the front stretch. 2 laps of pace laps once again as we work our way around the racetrack. Of course, with this series, a series that runs 5 days a week, multiple different series and multiple different classes that race across different time slots. Like on Mondays, you have the UMPs with the Grit Racing Series, where you have some drivers that have been very strong. Eric Elmore, in fact, is second in their points. You have series like the 360s on the Tuesdays. Then you have the Midgets on the Wednesdays, presented by Dial Designs, and just multiple different levels of drivers, about 5 to 6 days per week. That keeps everything action-packed here with this series when it comes to the Hammer Down iRacing League if you are just tuning in to tonight's coverage. Meanwhile, for Daniel Bass, in terms of qualifying, he ran a 16.2, and only 2 drivers were above that 16.2 range. That was Kelly and Mosley. And we'll see what they both do here on the start here, because they do have the faster pace compared to Bass and Sizemore. They wait now for the pace truck to come off the racetrack, moves to the bottom group. They're already bumping and banging coming to the restart here, and off and away we go for heat number 2. Daniel Bass able to get right into clean space for the time being. Sizemore pushed all the way up the track towards the cushion and out from the groove. He falls immediately back to possibly as far back as 5th. Exactly what he's going to do is he's going to push himself back behind Mosley. Meanwhile, Tuttle really took advantage, took the spot there, as diving all the way to the bottom for the passes, Dustin Sizemore, taking momentum down from the front stretch to be able to make the move and slide his way back into the 4th spot. Not in the transfer spot quickly yet. Meanwhile, bumping and banging up on the front wall. Kelly bouncing around after Bass bounced off the wall, and now we're going to be 3 wide. Still bouncing and banging, still keeping it straight, still surviving here as Tuttle bounces his way into second spot, or at least a battle into the second spot. They push their way up towards the wall, almost bouncing off the wall again with Shane Kelly. Multiple close calls that have now allowed a run now for Mosley. They go 3 wide. Mosley bounces into the side once again of Kelly. He'll take himself into the transfer spot. Tuttle gets a bounce off him on his left side once again. Really beating and banging these cars. Gotta wonder if damage is going to become a situation for some of these drivers, potentially the way they're banging here. As Daniel Bass has moved up into the high side, all the way up the cushion, up the shelf he goes, and all the way back to 3rd he goes. As Blake Mosley takes the second spot away. Skip Tuttle now in the lead for heat number 2, about halfway through this heat. That was a wild first 5 laps of this one. Now it's about for Daniel Bass. Can he recover? Trying to set his eyes now on Shane Kelly in the 19 machine. Bass, though, remember he got pressed against the wall multiple different times in the first couple laps of that run. Really lost it at turn number 2 and losing ground and quick. He is going to really lose speed here. The handling looks like it's going to be starting to be a really bit of a difficulty here for Bass as he's bobbing around and hitting the back of the car in front of him in Dustin Sizemore. So he is going to right to the back, and around he goes into the wall. Daniel Bass just got pushed into the wall at the end with Dustin Hall as he started to spin around with the way he was sliding towards the right. We stay green, coming to 1 lap to go in heat number 2. Skip Tuttle up in front with Blake Mosley in front of Shane Kelly. Can Kelly gain 1 more spot for the mains later on tonight? Kelly's going to easily move on by as Mosley just lets him on through, going up the shelf. They now go up higher up the groove with the slick starting to build up on the bottom side. And it'll be Skip Tuttle surviving really to get himself the heat number 2 victory. Also advancing with this heat, Shane Kelly and Blake Mosley. Finishing off in 4th, Dustin Sizemore, Terry Landis, Dustin Hall, Daniel Bass rounded out your 7 cars for heat number 2. And now we go towards warm-ups from here on out of this point. Try and get yourselves prepared up. Try and get yourselves prepared for the next few events here. They'll have about 2 minutes to really sort themselves out with the feature, as it looks like it's just been made official that all the other mains will be officially advancing everyone on by. Apologies for that. They have about a couple minutes to feel out how the racetrack feels here now. With the second heat, you might have noticed now, in turn 3 and 4 especially, the lead cars were starting to push up the track. That's where Eric Elmore is starting to try practice. They're starting to slicken themselves up on the bottom of the entry, forcing them to push themselves a little bit more and more up the cushion and up towards the shelf. That could be an interesting factor for this race. Now, when it comes to the organization now for this heat, here is how it's going to work out after the results here. Blake Mosley will start up at the front now, of course, with that. With the invert number is the number 6. So that means Jeremy Freeman and Skip Tuttle both move back from being a spot to potentially be at the front row with the invert to 5th and 6th for Tuttle and Freeman respectively. So they'll have to prove themselves again to see if they can keep up the similar pace they did to come away with their heat victories. Meanwhile, Howard Weaver and Shane Kelly both had some great pace in that heat. We'll see if they can continue to do so now in even better track position. Same for Blake Mosley, where now he has a decent spot to be able to have a great run and a great race overall in this one. Once we set up for the grid and go to green here, it's going to be, pardon me, 15 cars getting all set to go for this heat. And the main goal at this point for 30 laps, I should really say, got to make sure you keep the car clean and make sure it doesn't become a bumper car situation. Daniel Bass was the main example of that after getting wedged against the wall once or twice, as well as getting bumped around multiple times down the D-shaped backstretch. As we get all set to go for your starting grid for tonight's 30-lap main. Starting off now on the front row for the main, it'll be Blake Mosley starting alongside with Thomas Coggins. Behind him, Shane Kelly and Howard Weaver. Row number 3 will be Skip Tuttle and Jeremy Freeman, your winners of your heat races, followed by Eric Elmore and Dustin Sizemore. Behind them in row number 5, just inside the top 10, it'll be Cole Harvey and Terry Landis. Behind them, inside the baker's dozen, it's Curtis Kelly and Dustin Hall. Curtis Uphoff and Daniel Bass will start in 13th, 14th. Riding shotgun in terms of recorded times and recorded finishes, it will be Richard Spurrier-Wright. So 15 cars expected at the very least for the feature race today. Again, the distance will be 30 laps in total for these drivers today. And now it's about trying to get themselves planned out. Be prepared to go, all 15 drivers want to get the best runs again to be able to contend for the victories right now. Coggins right now looking to have a good points day. He's in that group. Mosley looking to have a good points day. He's also in that situation. Sizemore and Friedman are going to look probably for some good points days. Dustin Hall, he right now is inside the top 10 of the points at the edge of the top 5. He's got to get himself in a decent spot. Dustin Hall will be starting at the back of the field with an EOL given to him after being set for 12th spot, as he'll be pushed all the way back to 15th spot for this 15 laps and have a chance to, at very least, see what's going on in front of him with the Hornet's Nest and see if he can strategically strategize himself in terms of where to position himself on the track to make sure he stays out of trouble once we get up and going here. We're going to have about a lap to go until we get to the green flag, and about a lap to really strategize things. When it comes to today's race, again, the format for these races, every single time for this series, 30 laps, top 6 inverted with this series, and of course, you want to make sure you keep it safe. 14 points is the incident point cap if that becomes a situation and need for that, as they get all set to go down the backstretch. Right now, track usage is, of course, estimated when it started off with the heats about 20%. That's probably at about this range, about 35% at this point of the race. Meanwhile, we get all set to go coming down the front stretch. It's going to be, again, Blake Mosley as the control car. Thomas Coggins getting all set to go on the outside. Mosley's jumping before the pace truck even gets towards its parking stall. And off and away we go for 30 laps. Mosley gets a clean start, able to get single file. Coggins in second. Kelly able to cycle himself up to the 3rd spot. Double file in the Hornet's Nest. Meanwhile, behind them, among the drivers trying to push up through the Hornet's Nest, Elmore, Freeman, trying to get themselves out of double file situations and out of tight racing. Howard Weaver, meanwhile, got pushed back to 5th on the start after a pass from Skip Tuttle. Big time slide from Howard Weaver, going too much rotation in the middle of 3 and 4, almost snapped in front of Freeman. That could have been trouble there and could have caused a buildup, but able to keep the car going, and a great checkup from Freeman to stay out of trouble. Mosley, meanwhile, still up at the front in the first couple laps, 4 laps into tonight's main. Thomas Coggins in the 2nd spot, closing up right now in the 16-2s for them. Also 16-2s is Kelly. Go back to Tuttle right now. Can he hold off this time from Howard Weaver? Weaver's going to try and diamond it off the corner, very close to the pit wall barriers, and he's going to go for the slide on the bottom, right through the slick. Can't keep the run going, as that's a very tough place to pass when the track really slickens up, and from the bottom in general, really, in the later parts of a run. We're right now at 6 laps, I should say, into today's feature race, as Mosley, Coggins, and Kelly are bumper to bumper up at the front. Closing up inch by inch is Coggins, just getting right up to the back doorstep of Mosley with the way he's sliding. They're all sliding now right with their left fronts, just at the very edge of the slick of 1 and 2, and just going with their back tires outside the slick, trying to keep grip at this point. Mosley closing up with Coggins. Behind them, Kelly backs off a little bit, tries to go a little bit less of a rotation of an angle, does not work, as he lost a bit of momentum going down the backstretch, the D-shaped backstretch here with Volusia. Still very close racing with Weaver and Tuttle, meanwhile, approaching the 3rd waypoint about 2 laps from now. Tuttle having the pace still in the 16-2s. Everyone really has been running in the 16-2 club. That is up in the top 5 for here, but Howard Weaver wants to go. The way he's really starting to maybe wedge himself underneath the left rear quarter panel is really starting to put the pressure on Tuttle, and this time It's going to work. Can he put the slide job together? Can't keep the momentum. He'll lose the chance there. It's going to take him a couple laps to get himself back into position for the pass to get himself back into the 4th spot. Meanwhile, Thomas Coggins will now go for a run. He's positioned himself to the bottom side. Through the slick he goes. Can't keep the momentum once again. And he'll stay in the 2nd spot with Shane Kelly still waiting patiently behind them. The pace, meanwhile, was dropped to the 16.4s for the lead cars after this situation now. 16.2 right now from Howard Weaver as he really pushed behind on Tuttle. Almost hit the left rear corner panel for a 2nd lap. 2nd time in 3 laps. As right now, he is really wanting to go to be able to contend for this win. He's going to go for the pass here. Tries to push Tuttle off the track as he gets into a bumper cars. As Tuttle goes into a tire, caution flag comes out as he goes crashing into the shelf. That was a move where I wasn't quite expecting that, but with Howard Weaver, really wanted to go for the pass there coming towards near the halfway point. This caution will now recoil the field, get themselves positioned back together, and give a lot of drivers chances here to really get a decent spot here for a decent run. Right now, Weaver right now in the 4th spot after that. Right now, still in the lead, Blake Mosley. He's led every single lap so far, not without easy situations because Thomas Coggins has been right on his heels, ready to make a move. Behind them, Shane Kelly, and followed by Howard Weaver once again. Jeremy Freeman up now in the top 5 after the troubles for Tuttle. So that was a huge situation where once the bump came up, nothing that could really be done to control that because he got not just all the way up towards the cushion, but climbed up the shelf to that situation. As expected with that hip check, it's going to be an EOL for Howard Weaver. I'm not quite surprised with that. That's going to put him all the way back from 4th, all the way back the field to about the 14th spot with that. That was an aggressive move into turn number 3. And now it's about now getting lined on up. We are just past the halfway point. 1 to go here for this restart. You're watching again the Canton Wine Diesel Pro Late here for tonight's action. Of course, the Hammer Down iRacing League having a nice race tonight. Fairly clean racing until that moment. But other than that, everyone's been running a decent clip, decent lines. No one too aggressive and for the most part in this one. Now, we'll see that it's with the second half of the race. Do we see more aggression here? As Mosley goes off and away, back and away to racing we go. Coggins couldn't get the jump he needed to into the 2nd spot, but look at Jeremy Freeman. He went back to 4th spot after that EOL for Weaver. Got in a decent spot to attack for 3rd. Had to back off. Hornets Nest meanwhile 3 wide as Landis and Sizemore were both side by side in the end. Landis had to back out. Uphoff is trying to take advantage, but with big time situations with the cushion. Climbing up the shelf was Terry Landis on the exit of 2. This is going to be him again climbing up the cushion. Caution flags back out once again. And it looks like it might be near the back of the field. It looks like, yes, it is going to be Dustin Hall who climbed up the shelf this time. Went a full 90 degrees, but kept it straight. Still, in the eyes of iRacing, that is a caution flag that will reset the stage and the field. And about the same running order here with Mosley, Coggins, now Kelly and Freeman in their top 4. Eric Elmore took advantage to get himself back into the top 5 in this race. Dustin Sizemore waits on the wings in 7. Curtis Uphoff had a strong run after the restart there. He was about 10th spot on the last restart. He went all the way up to 7th with a couple drivers climbing up the shelf before the caution flag. Terry Landis got moved back to 8th. Howard Weaver, who got cycled back all the way near the back of the field, has moved himself all the way back to the 9th spot. So he was quickly on the attack, on the move in terms of his pace. In terms of the pace during that run, 16.2 was the run before the caution flag came out. So about the same clip as he was running up at the front. Everyone's going to now line up single file right here on the racetrack here. And still coming towards now, 1 to go. I believe it's coming up this time by. Sometimes drivers might decide after this to be a little bit patient here. Some of them, with it being less than 10 laps to go, might just go for it. We'll see what drivers decide to do here. And let's see what they decide to do in the restart here. They're going to stay single file for this. This is something I've seen where if you stay with situations where it starts to get to cautions breed cautions, series like Hammer Down iRacing League will have it set to single file restarts to make sure it's a clean restart and no one is over aggressive in the side-by-side action. That is the case here. I think it might be a great situation here. This might help out Blake Mosley. Everyone's lined up here. Mosley again the control car. Coggins couldn't get the jump he needed to, and away they go as they stay 1-2. Kelly with a decent start, Freeman with a decent start, but a great start for Curtis Uphoff, who got all the way to the bottom, right coming out of turn number 4. Dustin Sizemore, he's going for the pass to try and move himself up into 5th spot. Elmore able to hold on as bouncing around on the racetrack was Terry Landis, pushed all the way back to 10th spot. Meanwhile, Uphoff just got bounced around all the way back from where he was on the racetrack. Close call and almost a big-time situation for Curtis Uphoff, who started off the lap in 7th spot, able to at least maintain some time there to at least the 8th spot, but a very close call outside the top 7. Meanwhile, you might want to follow along with Howard Weaver on board because Weaver's on the charge, and we got bumper cars because a huge sideways situation for Jeremy Freeman sets up 3 wide for Howard Weaver. Weaver pushed up the cushion. Sizemore and Elmore still side by side. Uphoff sliding behind them. Weaver now in the back doorstep of Elmore once again. Goes to try and make it 3 wide. Tries to get under. Sizemore almost hits the tire barrier with 5 laps to go down to 4 laps to go. Weaver waiting to try and get himself at least a top 5 in this race. Sizemore trying to keep into the middle portion. Try and squeeze Howard Weaver down underneath the slick. He's going to keep the spot for the time being. Meanwhile, up in the front, it is currently an interesting situation because of all the bumper car situations. Thomas Coggins has fallen. He put himself up to the lead with all the craziness on the restart for a few moments. Blake Mosley got bumped all the way back to 3rd spot with 2 laps to go. Shane Kelly's in the 2nd spot, just like that. Jeremy Freeman in 4th. Eric Elmore rounds out the top 5 with Sizemore and Weaver still battling here. White flags up in the air for tonight's action here from Volusia. Coggins trying to run through the middle portion of the track. Runs with a slick. Has a great run down the back stretch. 16.3 was it's about a 10th of a second difference to 2nd place. And for Thomas Coggins, his patience pays off. He comes away with the victory for tonight's action for the Pro Late Models. Shane Kelly comes away 2nd. Blake Mosley pushed all the way back to 3rd spot. He was again the control car in the single file restart. And it's a question of what if in terms of what he could have done. That was around the point where the bumper car started off with a 3 wide, where Mosley got pushed up towards the cushion. Then Coggins went for the pass. Then he got bumped side by side with Shane Kelly, who had great momentum on lap number 24, coming to lap 25. That ends up getting him bumped to 3rd spot. But a great run today, coming away today for Thomas Coggins in this race tonight. It was an absolutely intense one for some moments for sure, rounding out your top 5 for today's grid. Here for the Hammer Down iRacing League, it was Jeremy Freeman and Eric Elmore. Dustin Sizemore gets in 6th spot, able to hold off a fiercely attacking Howard Weaver. Terry Landis rounds out inside the top 10 with Curtis Kelly and Curtis Uphoff, who went as high as 7th. Cole Harvey finished off in 11th spot, while 2 cars finished on the lead lap after that. Dustin Hall, Daniel Bass rounded out your top 13. 2 drivers finished off laps down. Skip Tuttle and Richard Spur round out your 15 drivers that ran and finished off for today's race. But it was definitely some intense action here for tonight's action with the Hammer Down iRacing League. I hope you enjoyed today's coverage. I'm Justin Prince. Allow me in the broadcast booth in the director spot today was Robert Bellinger for tonight. But for tonight, Make sure you stay clean of that dirty mud and have yourselves a beautiful Saturday night.